welcome to episode 253 of our SAP on Azure video podcast. Today is August 7th, and together with Goran, we are here to talk about anything related to SAP and Microsoft. Hello, everyone. So in previous episodes, we have talked about the extensibility concepts of Entra ID Governance, and other SAP integrations. In a lot of customer scenarios, these integrations are relevant in the context of HCM. So today, after more than 3 years, I'm happy to welcome Chetan Desai with us again. He recently published new guidance on integrating SAP HCM with Microsoft Entra using flexible provisioning options like CSV, SAP BAPI, or SAP IDocs. Welcome, Chetan, to our show. It's great to have you back again. Before we dive into the topic, maybe you can quickly tell us a little more about your role at Microsoft. What do you do here?
Yeah, hi everyone. It's great to be back here on the SAP on Azure podcast. I'm very happy. Thank you, Holger and Goran again for inviting me. So my name is Chetan Desai, and I'm based in Redmond, Washington, part of the Microsoft Entra ID Governance team. And I specialize in how HR systems specifically integrate with Microsoft Entra and Active Directory, and how you bring in all the authoritative user data from these HR sources into Entra ID to drive governance workloads, whether it is lifecycle workflows, your access packages, access reviews, all of which is so much dependent on HR data, right? So we, as Holger mentioned, we recently had the opportunity to work with partners and publish guidance on how to integrate SAP HCM with Entra ID, and that's what we'll cover today.
Fantastic. And let me say, first of all, thank you so much for joining us again. And we are recording this very early your time, so thank you so much for getting up early and doing this. I think with the announcements of SAP to deprecate their identity solution I think it was 2 years ago or something like that. I think we saw a lot of movement all of a sudden by SAP customers getting very interested in Entra ID, and especially the combination of Entra ID with SAP. So I think the work that you are doing with customers that are using SAP SuccessFactors, that are using SAP HCM solutions to connect this with Entra ID is something that resonates extremely well. So it's great that we have you, and maybe you can show us a little and talk about what exactly you have been doing there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So it's been a while, I think, since we last spoke, right? I think our last conversation was around SAP SuccessFactors. And since then, yes, I think we have been getting a lot of requests on, hey, there are other HR systems out there. How do we get data from those HR systems into Entra ID? And so we released, I think it was last year, into general availability, a capability called API-driven inbound provisioning, which is kind of a generic mechanism for HR sources to push data into Microsoft Entra ID's provisioning pipeline. And the recent guidance that we published around SAP HCM makes use of that methodology. And we will also talk about how it exactly works in this scenario. So it builds on top of a capability we released called API-driven inbound provisioning. And it aligns well with also how you can fetch data using SAP connectors that are already available in Logic Apps, for example. So we will go through that, and that's how we have shaped our guidance in this area.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, so maybe let's dive right into it. Maybe you can show us.
Perfect. Let me start sharing my screen.
Perfect. I can see your screen now.
You can see my screen. Okay. Yeah. So we'll talk about the three options that we have listed in the document and why we thought about those three options, right? This is, again, based on a lot of market research, partner guidance, and even understanding from customers how SAP HCM is actually configured by them. So So let's say you start a project where you want to sync data from your SAP HCM into either Microsoft Entra ID or your on-premises Active Directory that is connected to Entra ID. So the first question we should start off with is, are you running SAP HCM and SuccessFactors in a side-by-side mode? Why is this important? Because we understand that SAP SuccessFactors is the flagship product for SAP in the HCM space, and there are a lot of customers who have plans of moving to SuccessFactors. And there's quite a bit of overlap between SAP ERP HCM, what it provided on premises, and what SuccessFactors is providing on the cloud. So there are customers we know in the mode which are running both SAP HCM and SuccessFactors in side-by-side mode, which means that maybe you're using certain modules of SuccessFactors like talent or recruiting or learning, but maybe your core HR data is still in SAP HCM. And there is way to sync SAP HCM data into SuccessFactors. There's some amazing implementation design principles, IDP documents that SAP has published in this regard. So I'll not go into that aspect a lot, but suffice to say that, yeah, we know that there are customers who are running SuccessFactors and HCM in side-by-side mode. So if you're running SuccessFactors and HCM in side-by-side mode, and the question we ask is if it is yes, then do you want to use CSV file-based periodic sync? So this is decades-old practice of exporting data into a CSV format and then using that to load data into downstream systems, whether it is your IDP sources or any other system that needs HR data, right? So we acknowledge that that's a very robust method that is followed by a lot of companies. So we will talk about how you can use CSV file-based inbound provisioning. Let's say you don't want to use CSV file-based periodic sync, okay? Or you're not running SuccessFactors and SAP HCM side by side. Then the real question is, okay, do you want to configure a periodic sync with SAP HCM, or you want to do a near real-time sync? So periodic sync is something that will run every hour, 3 hours, or 24 hours, whatever, you pick your interval. Then there is the option of using what we call as SAP BAPI-based inbound provisioning. And then if you want to run a real-time sync, wherein as soon as a change happens in SAP HCM, you want those changes to flow into Entra ID, then you can use IDocs-based provisioning approach. Okay. And again, we know that you could have different. You may choose a hybrid approach as well. Maybe for terminations, you want a near real-time sync, but for others, you prefer to go with a BAPI-based sync or a CSV-based sync. That's fine. I mean, all these options are available to you. Yeah. And I didn't talk about the reverse sync. Like there may be some data from Entra ID that you want to sync to SAP HCM. We'll also cover that in this podcast today. Yeah.
Great. So that's that one thing that I really wasn't aware of. So I can also really use different options. So for example, I could potentially have for a one-time first thing, I could use CSVs, but then after that, I would use the near real-time sync for IDocs-based provisioning, for example.
Yes, you could do that. Right.
Cool. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So let's go with discussing the first option here. The CSV file-based inbound provisioning. How do you go about doing that, right? So in this option, you will see that from SAP HCM, especially if you're running it side by side, there is a add-on. There's an integration add-on that is provided by SAP, which allows you to periodically export employee data into a CSV file. Okay. And the details of that add-on and how to configure it is the reference to that is provided in our documentation. So essentially, it emits a CSV file that you can upload either onto a SFTP shared site or an Azure file share. And that's the completion of step 1. And then step 2 is where it gets interesting. So at the beginning of the call, I mentioned that we have this new capability called API-driven provisioning. So what it means is you can now push data from this CSV file into endpoint that we expose. It's a endpoint that we call /bulk upload, and it is kind of a direct entry point into our provisioning service. And the provisioning service does all the heavy lifting of making sure that it compares the data in your CSV file to Entra. So you as a client, you don't have to do any of that. It's all abstracted from you. All you do is you configure the attribute mapping in the provisioning service, and you tell us what is your target. Is it Entra ID? Let's say you have cloud native users, so it's going to be just Entra ID. But if you have hybrid users, we can connect to the Active Directory using provisioning agent, and then you sync first the data to Active Directory, and then flow the data to Entra ID through Connect Sync or Cloud Sync. So yeah, so it covers both scenarios. The control is the separation of duties, is really well defined. Like your IT team could configure this provisioning endpoint, hand it over to your shared services team who's probably implementing this middleware logic. And all they have to do is parse the CSV file, convert the data into SCIM format. So SCIM stands for System for Cross-Domain Identity Management. You use that to send data to this endpoint, and then it will be processed, and you can check the details of processing in our provisioning logs. Okay, so one key difference from our success factors integration that I'd like to call out here is, in the success factors integration, we follow a pull model where we are pulling data from success factors and we are querying for changes that are happening in success factors every 40 minutes or so. In this model, it's more of the system, the middleware is pushing data to this endpoint. That's the key difference here. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think this is a good time to quickly show this demo of how the right side of this integration is configured. So let me switch to my browser window. Can you see my browser window?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So here I do have the inbound provisioning docs open here. So if you go to our provisioning docs, you will see it talks about this capability of API-driven inbound provisioning and how it works. And we have published in detail guidance on how to configure it, how to grant permissions. So it is running with secure credentials and just the least privileged permissions that's required. And then we have a bunch of quick starts on how you can quickly test this. And in this case, in today's demo, we'll see how you can use Logic Apps as that middleware to push data into Entra ID. Okay. We will also include this in the links in the podcast, right, Sugar? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So with that, I'll go to so your journey will start from what we call as the Enterprise Apps Gallery. So in the Enterprise Apps Gallery, if you go to New Application, you can search in this gallery for a template that we have published called API-driven provisioning to Entra ID and API-driven provisioning to Active Directory. Now, of course, from the name, it's clear that what's the target. You decide which target you want to send the SAP HCM data. Now, let me select this, and then you can give it a name that's more descriptive. So you can say SAP HCM to Entra ID, for example. Okay, and once you create this app, this will instantiate an enterprise application. And we'll go into the provisioning blade of this application to take a look at how do you configure this, right? So this is your enterprise application. Now you go into the provisioning blade and you click on Get Started and you set this provisioning mode to automatic. Okay, and click on Save. That's it. So what you have now is an application that has this attribute mapping. And in this attribute mapping uses what we call as the API attributes are all SCIM standard attributes, payload attributes. So you want to send address data, for example, country data, name data, whatever data you want to send from success factors is all in this API parameters. and then their corresponding mapping to the Entra ID attribute is already defined. You can go ahead and say, I want to add a new mapping, and you can select the source attribute from which you want to pick that mapping, and what's the target attribute, right? So you can configure all of this. But the key thing here, what I'll call out is, if you go to the overview blade and expand view technical information, you get this unique API endpoint that you see here.
Yeah, yeah.
So this /bulk upload API endpoint is an endpoint specifically for your tenant, where you can now push the data from SAP HCM in that SCIM format. So that's how the under the hood magic takes place. Okay, so we will copy this endpoint. Okay, and there is a bunch of documentation guidelines we have published how you can quickly test this endpoint. So if you open Graph Explorer, you can go directly to the appendix and copy this body. This is the SCIM payload that you send to that endpoint, and you can make sure that's working. So for example, in this case, if I click on Start Provisioning, so now when I say start provisioning, I am placing the provisioning service in a listen mode, and I'm telling, okay, now look for any data that is coming from any HR source. Okay, in this case, we will send from SAP HCM, but if you want to give this a quick test, you can open Graph Explorer. So I'll open Graph Explorer, and I'm logged in as the user here. So I'll just copy this bulk upload endpoint, change my HTTP verb to post, and the request body, right? So if I go back to my Graph Explorer, I paste that in the request header since this is of type SCIM. So I'm going to use content type application SCIM plus JSON. And the moment I say run query, what I get back is a 202 response. Okay.
And
what
just
this means,
to highlight, I mean, obviously you are authenticated with your user right now in Graph Explorer. That's why you are able to call this endpoint. If I would do the same from Postman or a Bruno or any REST client, I would first need to get the token that I have the authentication, and then I could post the very same content. Yeah.
That's right. That's a great call out. Yes. So this is that quick. You want to kick the tires and make sure it's working. So just use Graph Explorer. And as long as in the Graph Explorer you have a user administrator or a global administrator login, you should be able to invoke this API endpoint and send this request payload. I think the most important thing to call out here, once you send this payload, is you get back a 202 accepted. What this means is that we are storing this payload that you just sent to us. We are accepting it, and we will asynchronously process this. Okay, so it's going to now the job that you instantiated, it's going to unpack this SCIM payload, map the attributes, check if the corresponding user is present in Entra, and do all that fancy processing. And then you can actually check the response of this in the location header that you receive here. So if this is the endpoint to query the provisioning logs, and you will now be able to check whether you're able to how the request was processed.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that's basically the under the hood, the API-driven provisioning, how it works. But how does this actually work with SAP HCM, right? So we talked about. I'll go back to the slide here. So I just showed you how we configured this right-hand side of the setup, where we are provisioning users to cloud only. But I told you, right, there's a CSV file that has come from SAP HCM. We need to process it. So there are two options you can use here, right? You could use a PowerShell script or Logic Apps, or we have also seen some customers use SAP BTP, for example. You can actually use SAP BTP. You could use Power Automate, essentially any middleware that your IT team is comfortable with. Okay, because end of the day, you're just making a call to the API endpoint that I just showed you.
Yeah.
So in this case, for today's demo, I'm going to use sample that we have published. So if you go to our quick start with Azure Logic Apps, we have provided here a sample template, Logic App template that you can get started with. If you don't want Logic Apps, if you want to use PowerShell, we also have provided a sample PowerShell script that you could use. So let's use the Logic Apps mechanism. So here, I'm going to go back to my Azure portal. So here I have configured Logic Apps workflow, which is going to read from the CSV file. So as I said, right, you can export the CSV file into a Azure file storage. So let's say I have this file from SAP HCM, and this file has, okay, so this file has these 5 records. Just for demo purposes, I have 5 records. It could be n number of records that are there in this file. So U001 to U005, these are the users. If I go to my Active Directory, we just confirm we don't have any users with this. If there are, we'll delete them. Yeah, so we don't have these users. So these are brand new users that are being exported from SAP HCM. It has all the data that HR has approved, because you want to make sure that the data coming from SAP HCM has been approved by your HR teams. The Logic Apps that we have here, this is the Logic App template. So step by step, it's getting the file content from the file that I just showed you, export from SAP HCM. It's going to read all those CSV records. It will convert these CSV records to a JSON format. And then there are certain guidelines on how you can use send data to the SCIM endpoint. Since it's a bulk upload, how many should be there in each batch? So each batch can take like up to 50. Each request can have up to 50 records. So we are optimizing for that. So that's what you will see here in terms of the for loop. That's what it's trying to do. But at the end of this Logic app, what it does is, after packaging all the requests, it creates this SCIM bulk payload request and sends it to the API endpoint that we have configured in Entra. So you can see here, this is the API endpoint to which we want to post the data. And again, the security is top of mind for us. We want to make sure that we are using the right credentials here. So as a best practice, we recommend using managed identity to authenticate and send to this. And we are using a system assigned managed identity, which you can configure in the identity section of the Logic Apps. And you will notice here, if you copy this object ID and go back to the enterprise applications, I can quickly search for this. So I've created this object ID, which represents the managed identity. And the only permissions you want to make sure that this managed identity has is a permission called synchronization data user upload and provisioning log read all. So that's the only permission that it needs. We have even a much more restrictive permission called upload.ownedby. If you have an application, if you have a service principal that's also creating that initial API-driven provisioning app. But suffice to say, what I want to call out here is you don't need a very high privileged permission like user.readWriteAll in order to create this user. So because you see, the end of the day, the IT admin configuring the provisioning job actually determines which users get updated. Okay, yeah. So with this setup, go back to the designer. Yeah, so we have configured all of this. Now let's run this and see how this works end to end.
So now basically the Logic Apps picks the CSV file or the text file with the 5 entries that we had. It would potentially split up if there were too many. It would split it up, and then it would send the request to the endpoint.
Exactly. So for example, if as you said, right? Let's talk a little bit of that splitting logic, right? So let's say in this case, we have 5 records, but instead of 5 records, let's say there were 150 records, and our optimum batch size, the max batch size that we have is 50 records in one request. So what would happen is if there's a file with 150 records, then this logic apps template that we have, it will create 3 requests, each with 50 records, and so that will be processed by the provisioning service. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. So we've completed the run. It says success. So here's what you will see. So it went ahead, it read the records, parsed the JSON output. If we go into each run details, so after all 5 records got processed, it went ahead and it sent this bulk payload to the API endpoint. Okay, so this was the bulk payload, and this was the body. So you see here, so this has the skim, all the CSV records that we saw, those are in skim format here. Okay. So this is the request that gets sent out, and as output, you get the same output that we saw in Graph Explorer. It's essentially 202 status. The status code is 202, and we get this back. Okay, so that's essentially what happened. Now, if we go into our Microsoft Entra ID and search again for these users, 00, we see these 5 users that were there in that file from SAP HCM show up here. So that's in essence how it is simplified. So you don't have to do any checks. Like now if I edit something in that CSV file, it will figure out which record exactly changed and only update that.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. Really try to keep it as simple as possible. Once you have the file out, that's all. You just have to send it to this endpoint.
This is really, really great. And I mean, the logic app is something that we are providing, right? This is
we have provided a logic app template. Yes. And if you want to add additional checks, or if you want to do additional things like user ID generation, you have your own logic for that. I mean, you can all bake that into that logic app. And as I said, right, most importantly, we know you have customers have different preferences for their middleware platform. You could go to party with any middleware of your choice.
Nice.
Right.
Really great.
Yep. And I think the key thing here is like even things like manager reference resolution, right? So for example, if you see if I go back to the file, we have one manager record here, Alex Jordan, and Alex Jordan is the manager of all these users. So if you go to I think we do have a manager ID. Yeah, we do have a manager ID column. And in this manager ID, we say that Alex Jordan is the manager for everyone else. So we have this manager 001 here. So the great thing about the provisioning service is that it does this automatic resolution of the manager. So if I go into any of these profiles and check their manager information, this should have got resolved too. Sure. Here.
So basically, all these properties should also now be available in Entra ID.
Yes, they should all be available in Entra ID. There's something wrong with the manager resolution, or it's not yet happened yet. We will come back to this to make sure that's confirmed. Yeah. Okay. So it should happen. We'll see if it was a demo glitch or something else. Okay.
All good.
Yeah. Okay. Next scenario, right? So that was the core scenario of CSV file-based inbound provisioning. We can now go into you don't have success factors and SAP HCM running side by side, and you want to follow a BAPI-based inbound provisioning mechanism. There are more steps here. on the SAP side of the house. The steps on the Entra side of the house is just the same, like what I showed you earlier. Just create an enterprise application and you should be good to go. On the SAP HCM side, in order to use the BAPI calls, the good thing is Microsoft Logic Apps already has a built-in connector that supports querying SAP function modules, invoking them, getting all that data. So what we recommend in this case is providing permissions to the specific function modules in SAP that you want access to. And once you have that access, use the invoke BAPI RFC action to fetch that data. And once you have that data, process the BAPI response. Then in the previous example, we saw how we converted the JSON payload into a SCIM payload. Here, you're going to get the BAPI response and convert that to a SCIM payload. Okay. Logic Apps provides all those transformation mechanisms, so you can extract the specific attributes from your BAPI response, create the SCIM payload, and send the data to the provisioning API endpoint. One more thing we recommend as a best practice is, once you send the data, because it is asynchronously processed, we recommend that you have a sleep timer for 60 seconds or so to make sure that the provisioning is complete. And then you query the provisioning logs to check for the provisioning status. And if any operation has failed, then you can go back and check if it and retry that operation. So for those records for which the operation has failed, you can send the request again to the same endpoint. Okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So this guidance, if I go back to our documentation, we have published. SAP HCM. So if you check our documentation, we have called out here the specific RFC BAPI function modules that you need to provide access to, make sure that this is set up. And once you have configured the provisioning API endpoints, you should be good to go with this, enabling this Logic Apps workflow. One key thing, and this was some great input that we heard from partners, that you can also define custom RFCs for Delta import. So this this section specifically talks about how you can create your own logic, and this is an ABAP code snippet where you can say that, okay, just give me data between a specific begin date and end date. And then this further talks about how you can invoke it. So your begin date is, so you can, in your Logic app, you can actually store the last time you queried SAP HCM and your current timestamp, and then query SAP HCM to only give you the changes between those two watermarks.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and you're right. I mean, calling any BAPI, any RFC from Logic App is fairly easy. So then if I know my SAP system, if I know ABAP code, I can easily create a custom function, a custom BAPI RFC, and then expose additional functionalities from there. So this is nice. Yeah.
Yes. And then there is certain nuances on also the SAP connector. I think depending on whether you're using the standard Logic Apps workflows or consumption, there are certain differences. So we recommend that you go through the Logic Apps guide. They have well documented the differences in the connector, and then use the one that best fits your integration pattern. And I remember, Holger, you also gave some good feedback on the specific considerations related to, was it? Yeah, the built-in versus the managed connector. And I think for customers who are deploying SAP on Azure, I think there's a specific recommendation on which connector they can use, right? They don't need to open network firewalls and all of that part. Yes. Yeah, I think we've called it out here. Yeah, the networking considerations, what you can do. Yeah.
Great, great.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's we are talking about the specific delta function, how you can invoke, and as I said here, once you have got the output from SAP, you can map it to Skim and send it to the same endpoint. Okay. Okay.
Nice.
So with that, I think we can go to the next step, which is the IDocs based integration. So this is the scenario where you're looking for a more real-time integration. So the way this works is there's a bunch of configurations you need to do on the SAP HCM side in terms of, again, configuring the RFC destination, making sure there is a receiver port for the RFC destination and a sender port for the ABAP connection, and how you want to distribute the IDOC. But at the end of the day, what happens in this case is the logic apps that in the previous case, it was running on a schedule basis where you can have your timestamps defined, and you will query it for the changes to be retrieved between two periods. Now, as soon as you get a change, the trigger will be used to start a logic apps, which will process the IDOC. And again, the same pattern you follow, convert it to a Skim payload, send it, wait for some time for the provisioning to happen, query the provisioning logs, and ensure they're successful, failed records, reprocess them. So that's the same logic here.
And exactly, I really like this approach, obviously, as well. There's basically an event on the SAP side, and this event then triggers the logic app flow. Whereas in the previous step, the logic app was triggering itself on a scheduled, on a recurrent basis, like every hour or every day or whatever. So the event really starts from the SAP side with the IDoc based, and with the other one, logic apps just runs every X hours or minutes or whatever.
That's right. Yep.
Cool.
Okay.
Good.
So that's the IDocs portion. And again, going back to our guide, I think, we have called out the specific steps or the networking considerations that apply to this scenario. That's about it for the IDocs integration. And I think with this, we are ready to transition to that last step. Okay, now you have all this SAP HCM data in Entra ID, and you want to write back. And why is write back important? Because the write back scenario is important because once the accounts are created in Entra ID, the IT team usually generates an email ID for them, assigns a specific phone number, and you want to make sure those are written back to SuccessFactors. So in this case, we recommend using something called as the Microsoft Entra ID Governance Joiner Lifecycle Workflow. So this is a very a workflow that you can easily configure in Entra ID, where you can set a trigger that for every new hire who is joining on so and so date, you want to perform these actions. So you want to do things like probably send them a temporary access pass that they can use on the first day to log in. Make sure they have the birthright groups assigned, birthright access assigned for their day one. And then as part of that, one of your steps could be, okay, make sure you write this email back to SAP HCM. So that's this step of invoking the custom Logic Apps extension. And again, here we are reusing the Logic Apps SAP connector, where you can invoke the BAPI action, BAPI user change, where you can include the email address and user names, and just you're done. So you complete the whole flow in this with this last change.
Cool. And I like that you point this out, because obviously, I mean, we were always talking about HCM system being the first one. Basically, that's where I create the new employee. But at that time, I mean, I have a lot of details of the employee, but as you said, the email address, for example, is missing. So I somehow need to get this information also in my HCM system. And with this, so the HCM system triggers basically the creation in Entra ID. Then in Entra ID, the joiner lifecycle workflow would be started at some point, created the email, and the email would then be sent back via again logic app, obviously a different logic app flow to the SAP system. Really full
Yes.
circle, really nice.
Yeah, exactly. Covers the end-to-end use case, and just for a quick demo here on where you configure this lifecycle workflows. So it's in the same Entra admin console. If you go to ID governance, and there's something called lifecycle workflows you will see here. You can go ahead and create a workflow. And in this workflow, you will see these different templates, what you want to do
Yeah.
for joiner scenario, mover, and lever scenario. So in this case, you want to onboard a new hire and make sure their data is sent to SAP HCM. So you can select this. So I can select this and say onboard new hire employee from SAP HCM. And this is the trigger is time based. So what I'm saying is the employee hire date, right? So you will see from the SAP export file, one of the dates we have got from here is their actual date of hire. So we can, so if there is a employee with a hire date of that starts today, you can actually say, okay, on employee hire date, I want to trigger this workflow. You can scope this workflow to a specific department if you want to control that execution. And then the task here is the review task. So you want to make sure you want to add the users to a specific group. Here, you can actually say, I want to invoke a custom task extension. And when you say custom task extension, it gives you the option to select a task extension, which is a logic apps. So you can actually configure a logic apps that is invoking the SAP BAPI. Yep.
Nice. And I think typically I would obviously create the user in my HCM system, I don't know, a week before the actual employee arrives.
Yes.
So this information is already in Entra ID, and then obviously once the day comes, then this lifecycle workflow would be triggered. Then we can call the logic app. Then we create the email address or something. Nice.
Exactly. Yep.
Cool.
That's right. Yeah. So it's a lot of flexibility around here, and you'll see like most of the functionality is click and configure. The only part where a certain effort is required is those logic apps invocation, which I think the logic app connector does a great job of once you have all the parameters put in there, it just takes over and does everything that you wanted to do.
Really fantastic.
Yes.
Well, Chetan.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so that completes the flow.
Exactly. I was just gonna say, I think this is really amazing to see this whole end-to-end process that we have here, and now also for HCM systems. So I know there are still a lot of customers that run their HCM system on-prem. They still have this. I mean, yes, there is this transition towards success factors, but still a lot of customers are, for whatever reason, on HCM, and it's great to see the integration that they have now, the possibilities to really have this end-to-end life cycle between Entra ID and their systems. Really nice.
And we acknowledge the fact, right? Like SAP HCM is not going anywhere. Like I think even there is a flavor of SAP HCM which is now available on S4 HANA.
S4HANA,
I think it's called it's S4 H4 something. It's there's a specific
honestly, I don't
acronym
know
for it.
exactly, but
Yeah. So it's available. So we know there are customers who are going to use SAP ERP on their S4 HANA as well, and even for those, the same integration patterns applies.
Yeah, great. Well, Chetan, thank you so much. I think it was about time that you joined us again on our podcast. Thank you. It was great. It was a fantastic overview and introduction, and I'm sure this will be helpful for a lot of us that are running SAP HCM. I hope that the next iteration, the next visit of you in our podcast will not be 3 years, but I'm sure you'll do some other interesting things, and we can have you back on our show sooner than 3 years.
Oh, absolutely.
So
We're doing a lot of work in that front, and it's always a pleasure being on your podcast. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you again. Till then, thank you very much, and see you. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.